Hi, everybody. This is Val Hart, the real Dr. Doolittle and show horse expert, equine performance expert. I'm here with a fabulous guest, a dear friend, Elise Gaston Chand is with me today. She's the podcast host of a new wonderful podcast called Because of Horses. Welcome to the show, Elise. I'm so glad to talk to you.
Oh, thanks so much. This is a real treat.
It is a treat. We really wanted to come together to celebrate our love of horses. You know, and I know I fell in love with horses when I was 5 years old, and I went to a school event, a fair, kind of a little market, school days market thing, and one of my friends, my new little friends, her father trained horses for the cavalry.
Wow.
I know, and they brought a big old thoroughbred horse, and they brought maybe a quarter horse, I don't know. At that point, they were a little huge, right? I'm like this big, and they're like this big.
That's right.
And they brought a pony, and I got to ride the pony. And you know, I went in and I looked at that horse and their big, beautiful brown eyes.
Yeah.
And their head came down, you know, and kind of touched me there. And I was like, oh my God! I never knew there were such incredible beings in the world. And after that, I was just a horse crazy kid forever. You know? And I'm still a horse crazy kid. So how did you fall in love with horses, Elise?
Oh my gosh, I somehow I was born with it from the very first. I mean, the kind of somewhat tongue-in-cheek joke in my family is that my first word was horse. I don't know if that's true or not, but I really like it.
Yeah, for your mom and dad, horse.
That's or some mangled version of horse, yeah. And you know, I was born in Virginia, and at the time it was Vienna, Fairfax, Virginia. At the time, it was nothing but horse farms. These days, you'd never recognize it for what it was then. Yeah. But everywhere we drove, there were horses in fields, and from the time I was capable of moving around in the car, I would be pressed up against the window, you know, fogging the glass every time we passed a field with horses in it, and yelling for everybody in the car, you know, draw their attention to this horse. And so it became a joke in my family that whenever a horse was spotted, somebody in the family would call out, "There's a horse, Lisa, come ride me," you know, and it always made everybody laugh, but there was a part of me that was like, okay, let's go. You know?
Okay.
Right. I'm in.
I'm in. Yes.
That's right. Yeah. And I know that there are a lot of other horse crazy kids out there who inexplicably have this love from a very early age for horses. And again, it's inexplicable. I don't really know where that comes from, particularly in families where you're the only one who had an interest in horses. We didn't have horses. Nobody else in my family cared for them. I mean, they didn't dislike them, but it wasn't a grand passion for them. It's just sort of like, yeah, they're neat animals, moving on. Yeah. So there's no explanation for it. And yet I was just born with it.
I got it. I get it. It's interesting. My parents weren't into horses either. But my grandfather was a cowboy. I always say from way back. He left home when he was a young boy and joined a ranch and became a cowboy in the 1880s.
Goodness.
He rode the range. He did all the cattle drive, you know, trails. He knew Geronimo.
The real deal.
He knew Geronimo personally, the Indian.
Oh my goodness.
He always told all awesome stories about smoking the peace pipe with Geronimo and knowing his two wives. And so what happened when my parents figured out that I really was and wanted a horse. I went to summer camp every year. My mother was a counselor, one of the summer camp teacher people, and they had horses. And, you know, it was like, whoa! So I would get to go every summer, all summer long, because she taught and did things at the camp. And we had two ponies and, well, two ponies that were rideable, two ponies that were not rideable, and two thoroughbreds. And I wound up, when I was 12 years old, being nominated or signed or hired as the horse counselor. And I was in charge of all the horses. And I got to train. The filly, Pearl, was a round poly pony that had never been trained or worked with. And they asked me that summer to train her to be able to ride and to pull a cart. And so at 12 years old, I am grappling with this pony, trying to figure out how to teach her how to do these things. And we did pretty good, actually. It was really quite a exploration. And then for my 13th birthday, my cowboy grandfather, found a Welsh mare. Her name was Maisie, and that was my birthday present.
Oh, how wonderful.
I got to get Maisie, and we bred her, and we got a fabulous Appaloosa Palomino filly out of her named Sunshine, and I got to train Sunshine, and it was grand and wonderful adventures. I don't know what I would have done without my horses. So,
oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's a great way to start too. Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking back. My dad used to tell me stories about his mother, who we called Nana, but her name was Lottie, and she was just kind of the quintessential frontierswoman. There was nothing that she couldn't do. But when they were living in San Francisco, apparently she did love horses, had no involvement with them, never owned them, but kind of from a distance loved them. And he would tell me stories about how she would travel by train to watch Seabiscuit run.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so apparently she had a passion for racehorses, which is very interesting. Yeah. And to live at that time, to be able to see a horse like that run, had to have been just incredible. So such a historical event, especially for horse people, I think.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's wild. So it's great that your family was connected that way with your interests and fed your interests. I've also benefited from a very loving and understanding family myself. It's not always that way, though, I think, for horse kids, and lots of very good reasons for it. Horses are very expensive, they're very time consuming, and they can be incredibly intimidating, particularly for parents whose instinct is to protect their kids.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of exposing your child, especially a small child, to an animal that's so huge, particularly when maybe you don't have any understanding or comprehension or comfort with these enormous animals yourself, to then have the courage to support your child in their love, it has to take just incredible fortitude. And so I credit my family, my mom especially, with having supported that interest right from the very beginning for me. And in my case, anyway, I was very fortunate. I got involved with the Pony Club. We were in Virginia at the time, and my mom tracked down the local Pony Club chapter after having found a great riding school for me so I could learn safely. But not all kids are like that. And up until that point in time, I think we did everything you could do wrong, we did, through the best of intentions, but nonetheless, you survived it, and thank God everything was fine. But yeah, it's just so interesting. And then, when you were 12, to be tasked with training an untrained horse is a perfect example of that. Oh my God, what are people thinking?
Really?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. And you know what we did? We found these little booklets, and they were about how to train a horse or how to break a horse. I think in the terminology of the day, it was how to break a horse.
Right. Yeah.
And I read through them, and I read through them. And I can do that. I'm not doing that. I can. So as a highly sensitive empath, I also had to find a way to connect and to engage, and in my world, I'm an animal communicator, a horse whisperer. So I talk to Pearl, And I said, here's what we would love to do with you. And this would be fun, I think, for you. Much more fun than just hanging out with your mom all the time. And would you play with me? How can we make it fun for you? What would be entertaining? I mean, other than hurting anybody.
Right. Yeah.
How can we help each other do this game? And what she was like, okay. And she guided me, she was like, okay, well, I'm okay with that, but I'm not okay with that. And then we would talk about it. And she was being ridden really pretty, I don't know, it took maybe a month or so. By the end of the summer, she was being ridden by some of the better campers, especially one who is very brave. But, it's like we have to communicate with our horse. We have to understand them and feel their feelings, feel their heart, where are they? What's going on with them. And I love the book that you wrote. It's how to help young people and parents who don't really know what they're getting into, and they're worried, and they're maybe didn't have the gift of a great trainer or a really great place to learn.
Absolutely.
So you want to talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So it's got to be the longest title in the history of books. And I tell you, I generally, when my daughter's home, she's in school right now, high school, but when she's home, I generally defer to her. And I'm like, babe, what's the title again? But it's A Parent's Guide to Riding Lessons, everything you need to survive and thrive with a horse-loving kid. Oh my gosh. But
if I can write for our viewers, a
parent's guide to riding lessons, and then my name, and that ought to do it. But when I saw that title, it came back from my publisher. I was kind of like, really? Because it could be this long, but it's like this long. Anyway, so what had happened was I was actually out doing a barn tour, going equestrian center to barns to learning stables, all of that, riding stables. And everywhere I went, I observed something different until, I finally got to this one barn, and it was a beautiful barn. So anybody who wasn't particularly familiar with horses or with riding or training or any of that would have walked in. It was immaculate. To their credit, it was beautifully maintained. All of the horses were shiny and healthy, and it looked great. But there were little things that you'd catch as a horse person that were very disturbing to me. No judgment on saddlebreds at all, because like every other discipline, there are some trainers that are absolutely phenomenal, and there's some trainers who are not. So that's true of thoroughbreds and warm bloods and Andalusians, which is my old world, and Arabians, and it just as there are different people, there are different types of trainers, levels of trainers, approaches, right? So that aside, but there were all these. Part of the barn was a saddlebred barn, and all of these saddlebreds were in their stalls with their heads tied way, 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 way up, and they would stay that way for hours. And their hay nets were up high, and their water was up high. So credit to the trainer that they could at least reach their hay and they could at least reach their water, but they could never put their heads down. Jesus. And for people who might not understand the strategy of why, and I'm not saying accept, I'm saying understand. The concept is that saddlebreds in a certain part of the discipline are intended to be very head high with beautiful upright carriage. And to encourage that, there are a lot of mechanical ways you can do it. And this is one of them. So I walk in and I was automatically very uncomfortable by that. But that wasn't why I was there. I was there for another purpose. I was doing a barn tour. I was supposed to be talking with people and all of that. So I'm walking around, and there was an opportunity to observe a lesson, and this trainer had put a 4 or 5 year old little girl on the back of a saddlebred, a very tall 16-1, 16-2 hand saddlebred. Now, forgetting the size differential for a minute, because you'll get lots of different opinions. I mean, my first horse right, wrong, or indifferent was over 16 hands. And he was more than I could handle. I ultimately grew into him. So I understand putting a small child on a big horse. Again, as a parent, not saying I think that's a great idea, but I get it. It happens. Okay, so that aside. And she was riding in a slick. And so people who aren't familiar with slicks, it's a style of saddle that is often used with saddlebreds, with Tennessee Walkers, with some other horses. Park style is another phrase for it. And it's like the name connotes, it is a very slick saddle, and it takes a really talented rider to sit in that saddle. As a professional horsewoman of 30, 40 years, I don't know, I would not be really comfortable riding in a slick. It's not my thing. I haven't been trained to effectively ride in a slick.
Yeah.
I understand my own limitations, right? So I would think before getting it, and then getting into a saddle like that. So anyway, 4 or 5-year-old little girl, great big saddlebred, slick. Roached mane, so there's nothing for her to hang on to. There's no cantle, there's no nothing in front to hang on to. She's just on this horse. The horse is freaking out. I mean, wide-eyed, freaking out, head high, dancing all over the place. And the mom is observing this lesson. Cut to the chase, kid gets thrown. And the trainer follows that old get back on the horse. Now, there's a time and a place, absolutely, for get back on that horse, right? Yeah. But there's also a time and a place to say, no, this has now become an incredibly explosive situation. Somebody, probably this 4 or 5-year-old little child, is going to get hurt.
Yes.
And yet the mom did not engage and say, hold on, the child's crying and screaming. The horse is freaking out and rearing. Let's not put this little child back on this horse. But she was not a horse person. She did not understand the danger. She felt confident, right, wrong, or indifferent with this trainer, and trusted that the trainer would or knew what she was doing. And so she put this little kid back on this horse, and I couldn't watch anymore. I had to leave. But I left that barn angry and frightened and angry. And yeah. I was talking to everybody. I was talking to all my riding friends. Oh my God, you won't believe what I just saw. And I was married at the time, so I was telling my husband, oh my God, you won't believe what I just saw. And I'm watching his eyes glaze over after about probably 30 minutes into this tirade about how awful this was, how dangerous this was. And so I had to write it down because it would not go away. It would not leave me. Yeah. And so I started writing it. And as I started writing it, it occurred to me, oh my gosh, this may be a book. Really, really, really long story short. I wrote a proposal. I sent it to the best equestrian publisher in the US, Story Publishing. And within like a week and a half, which is unheard of, Deb Burns, my publisher, who's phenomenal, shout out for Deb, responded and said they were very interested in the book. And so I realized a dream of mine, a lifelong passion of mine, to become a published author. I was absolutely thrilled. But that book really is all about, if you are a non-horse person, parent, you have a kid who's interested in horses, crazy about horses, and wants to give them a try, how do you support them and do so in a safe way, guide them to a great trainer who really does know what they're doing and starts from a place of safety first for the horse and for the child? How do you do that? And what's all the terminology, and why are they riding in circles, and just to try to make some sense of it. And so that was the genesis and the purpose behind that particular book.
Excellent.
Yeah. And I'm sure in your touring that you've seen some things yourself that have just made you kind of clutch your heart and wince.
It's really interesting. There's been a lot of talk that I've seen lately in social media, and I've been around it, most of my life too. It just breaks my heart. Especially in the show world, there's a lot of things that go on that is just flat out cruel and abusive to try to get what they want the horse to do, to how they're supposed to look. It's interesting. It's just working with one of my show horse clients, and she was going for the nationals. She wanted to win the nationals this year. And when I tuned into her horse, the horse was like, I'm in agony. She wanted to know, why is she spinning the bit? Why is she hollow-backed? Why isn't she this? Why is she missing the cues? Why is she, those kinds of questions. Like, make her do it. And I'm like, there's a point where you have to listen to your horse. And so we went through the conversation of me connecting them so she could feel what was going on in her horse when she was doing these things to her. And she wasn't trying to be cruel or mean. She wasn't. She was doing what her trainer had taught her to do. And
Sure.
by the way, the horse is doing the same thing to the trainer that she was to her, to the rider. It's like, well, duh. It's a duh moment. But what was happening is they were cranking her head down to this far close to her chest to get the vertical, and get the collection and get the rounding and whatever they thought they were trying to do. But when you do that, the horse can't breathe. And you're asking them, and it hurts, hello, and she can't concentrate and focus on the cues. She's a good, willing, big-hearted horse, and she loves her person, but oh my God, you're killing me here. I can't even focus on what you're asking because you're hurting me. So, every time our horse gives us pushback or resistance or some flack or, runs away or something like that, we need to look deeper. There are a lot of reasons why horses don't want to cooperate with us, or or they're not showing up in their brilliance. Underachieving horses. How can we help them show up in their brilliance? And the big part of it, in my world, is to listen to them. To do things they enjoy doing, to help them. And a lot of people, I think, in the show world especially, they have the image of how it's supposed to look, but they really don't have the inner knowing of how to achieve it naturally and from a place of strength and grace and flow and harmony, being in sync with your horse. So it's a natural expression. So I don't know if that made sense or not, but I look at that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's like, what are we doing? And there's top performers, top riders in the world today that apparently think it's okay to abuse their horses. And the FEI and organizations and judges ignore it. They turn a blind eye to it. I think that's wrong. So I would love to see a difference. To see people caring people who love horses and really want them to be happy and healthy and whole. And I'd like to see us band together, and say abuse is not okay in any way, shape, or form. You don't soar your horse's feet so that they step higher. You don't tie the saddlebred's head up to the roof. I mean, what? Would you like to do that? These are intelligent, sentient beings. They feel, they think, they have wisdom, like we do. So to me, when I see a picture of abuse or a come encounter it, it's like, would you do that to a human child? And apparently, apparently they would. But it's like,
yeah. I think it probably, like everything else, begins from a place of intent. Yes. And I think that there's a huge difference between purposefully causing discomfort or pain or fear versus unintentionally. And so I kind of start from that place is, there's just not knowing. I think it's incumbent upon anybody who's going to work with an animal, or to use your example, with a child or anybody to learn well.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and just, I've spent most of my professional career in human resources. And so one of the things that we've talked about in HR is just because somebody's been trained doesn't mean they were trained correctly. And so a lot of times when I would lead a workshop or would would get involved on the training side of HR, I kind of start from the beginning and just say, look, I know that you guys all have a certain level of knowledge, but to kind of bring it back to basics, we're going to start at this foundation and then we'll go forward from there. And mostly what I did was I dealt with the legal side of employment law, that kind of thing. Not to go down that rabbit hole, but one thing I did want to say is I think that in recent years, you mentioned FEI. FEI and a lot of the other, particularly international level judges and competitive organizations are, I think, a lot more sensitive and aware of the handling with horses. And particularly, I'm thinking about the dressage horses, where roll cur has been outlawed. And for years, yeah, and absolutely. And I've seen a number of horse and rider pairs being removed from Grand Prix jumping, for example, because the rider was just doing a horrible job, or there was some level of abuse, or the method that the person was riding with, they're jerking on the horse's mouth, or they're being rough with the horse, having them DQ'd, disqualified, and removed from the arena. So I have seen a good bit more of that, and I absolutely give credit to the judges and to the organizations that are stepping up, have stepped up, and are continuing to step up to ensure that the animals are treated better. I mean, just the other day, if I'm not mistaken, it was in Australia, maybe about a week ago, there was a jockey who was banned for a period of time for punching a racehorse. And the more that horrible examples like that are publicized and there are repercussions, negative repercussions, public outcry especially, the more it will be made clear that this is not okay, this is not acceptable, and it needs to stop. Now, happily, I think that those are rather rare events, that kind of abuse. And I know it's not all sunshine and roses, but I tend to think that the vast majority of people who have horses genuinely love them. Now, sometimes those are working animals, and so they're not living in, bubble wrapped palatial nirvana. They have jobs to do, but they have everything they need to be healthy, emotionally, physically, and they've got a great life. They've got a hard job to do maybe, but they've got a great life, and they're very well cared for. And then there are the wonderful yard ornaments. I mean, there's so many different ways to have and love and be involved with horses. No one way is right, but at heart, caring for them and making sure that they have what they need to be healthy, to be a horse, I think is a good thing. And that I think is true of dogs and cats and kids. So, and kids. Yes.
Nice ones too. I love that. Just real quick, defining roll cure for anyone who doesn't know.
Sure. So roll cure is a method that was actually utilized for a number of years until the last couple of years, where in dressage, where the rider would hyperflex the horse's head and neck, bending them at the pole very, very tightly. If you can envision the horse's chin touching its chest, and then kind of driving through the seat, because the concept was that would collect or even over collect them in practice, so that sorry, my Alexa's about to go off here. I'm gonna unplug her. So that when you were in competition, they would typically do this in the warm-up arena, but then when they would go into the competitive arena for their dressage test, they'd release the horse, back to the normal upright position and or truly collected position, and the horse would hold that position better. That was the whole concept around it. But what has been found, as you were alluding to a minute ago, is that incredible extreme collection where the horse's chin is on its chest was not only painful to the animal from the bit perspective, the cavison, the nose band, ratcheted down tight. They've got double bridles, double bits.
Yeah.
So all this metal in the horse's mouth, he can't open his mouth to escape it. And so it's very severe. And it's closing off the horse's airway, if you think about it anatomically,
Yeah.
and trying to balance hyper. I mean, if we were to try to walk with our heads like this, it would be very, very difficult. And they were being asked to perform that way and warm up before actually going into competition. Anyway, and you would also see sometimes flecks of blood at the horse's mouths. They foam a lot.
Yeah. Cut.
Yeah.
They go blue, and often they ride in a double bit.
The tongue would go blue, the lips. Yeah, it is not a good thing. It is not a good thing.
I'm so glad that people are paying attention and speaking up.
Yes.
The public outcry, and that we're learning better. And I have to agree with you. To me, the only good horse owner is one that loves their horse, that cares about them. And I think that's the majority of us. I think,
Absolutely.
We do have that connection, that communication, that we have that, the dream of dancing with our horse, being one with our horse, of having that magical experience. And I know you've experienced that too, where you're just in sync. It's just an incredible place.
Yep. Yeah, I would totally agree. I mean, it was so funny. I don't know if others were coached along the same lines, but when I was pregnant way back, my doctor had encouraged me to have a happy place in mind, so that when we made that run to the hospital, I could mentally go to that happy place, and it would distract me from the events going on. And my happy place was actually, and horse people will get this, but my happy place was actually on the back of my Andalusian stallion at the time. His name was Novelisto.
Oh, wow.
And riding into the arena at Nationals in Fort Worth, Texas, at Will Rogers Coliseum. That was my happy place. Yeah.
Woo, that's amazing.
Yeah. And so many reasons why I have always just loved Andalusians. And for people who aren't familiar with the breed, these are the horses that you see in the tapestries across Europe, that are in castles all over Europe. The horses that you see in Lord of the Rings and Gladiator, with the thick manes and the arched necks. They're just gorgeous, gorgeous horses. And the Spaniards have bred them for centuries to be very focused on people, wonderful work ethic, incredibly intelligent, very brave, just wonderful horses.
Wow.
And Novelisto I purchased when he was 3 days old. I fell in love with his mom, when she was pregnant with him. And I said, whatever, her name was Felice, which means happy in Spanish. I said, whatever Felice has, I want. Filly or colt, I don't care. This mare is incredible. I mean, she was just such a wonderful mare, and the father, favorito, favorite in Spanish. Beautiful stallion. I want the baby. So Colt was born. I named him Novelisto, which is Spanish for novelist, which connected with my other love, of writing. And anyway, so working with him for years and years and years, saddle training him, teaching him everything. For me, the end picture of I did it right, I did it well, was riding him into the Coliseum at Nationals. That was sort of, 6 years of work, right? So that was why it was such a happy place for me. And then fun thing, Novelisto, I ultimately sold him and the other horses as well, but Novelisto was purchased by a family that's very involved in Hollywood. And so he now is a movie star. He's been in a bunch of different movies and some TV shows. Yeah, he was the horse in the movie A Winter's Tale with Will Smith. I think it's Colin Farrell. I always get Colin Farrell and Colin Firth. I think it's Colin Farrell, but I always get the two Collins mixed up.
Yeah, Firth is the old guy. Colin Farrell.
It's the young fellow.
Yes.
Farrell. Yeah, Farrell. And Russell Crowe were all in that movie. And so Novelisto was the white horse that was in that movie. Wow. And I joke that he couldn't fly when I owned him, but he flies in
That was a new trick they taught him.
Absolutely, man. I thought I was halfway decent at training. These guys, they really know their stuff.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that story. It's so cool.
He is a wonderful, wonderful horse. He was a wonderful father. His babies are all just like him. And it was so funny, you know, people talk about stallions being difficult, and I think it depends entirely upon the horse and how they were raised, how they were handled. But I remember very clearly people, you know, vets or farriers or whatever, coming over to do vaccinations or to trim feet or, you know, whatever needed to be done. And, you know, they'd finish with all the horses and look around and like, okay, where's the stud? And I'm like, that was him. And they'd bend over and look and they're like, oh my gosh, he's just standing there tied with all of these mares in the barn aisle. You know, it was a very long barn aisle, so everybody had safe distance from one another. But he was just standing there. He wasn't being steady. He wasn't pawing. He wasn't calling to the girls and checking them out. He just was minding his manners. And that's Novelisto. He just is a wonderful, wonderful horse.
What a what? Oh, what?
Yeah, he was a good boy.
Yeah, I can see why he's your happy place.
Yeah, he was. That was a while ago because Abby, my daughter, is almost 16, but
well, still a happy place.
Still a happy place. That's right.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking let's close it down about now. So I know you've got another interview to do later today, and thank you so much for taking some time to talk about your love of horses. You want to leave us with anything, Elise?
Well, I would encourage folks who haven't checked it out yet, if they'd be so kind to give my podcast, Because of Horses, a listen. You can find it in all of the places that podcasts are carried. So iTunes, Apple, Google Play, Android, Stitcher, TuneIn, Player FM, all those places, as well as my website, www.becauseofhorses.com. Okay. And the guests are phenomenal folks who are from all walks of life and all types of careers. And what they're linked by is their love of horses and how they have, in very different ways, incorporated that love into their lives, from National Geographic filmmakers to CBS News correspondent to, I just found out today, Donna Brothers is going to be on the podcast, which I am over the moon about. I'm so excited. Yeah. And the person that I'm interviewing today is Rupert Isaacson. And Rupert is from the Horseboy book, the Horseboy film, the Horseboy Foundation. Wow. And is just an amazing, accomplished journalist, New York Times bestselling author. I'm so looking forward to talking with him, and I hope my guests enjoy hearing from him in the next couple of weeks. Last thing I'll say is tomorrow is episode 5, and that is with my guests Don and Kiki Teague. Wonderful couple, funny conversation, and lots of really interesting information from them. So I hope people will check that out too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just think that's fabulous. So everybody go check out Because of Horses, the podcast. Becauseofhorses.com is Elise's website. Give her some support, show her some love, and if you know someone worthy of being a guest, on her show, let her know.
Absolutely.
And I plan to do a lot more of these types of interviews as well, and chats. And so if you know someone to send my way, I'd like to hear it too. And if you got a problem with your horse, let me know. That's my specialty, is solving problems with horses. So go to showhorseexpert.com. Here, I'll put it in the chat. Oops, sorry. And let's see what we can do to get you and your horse happy.
Absolutely.
Happy horse is a wonder and a fabulous thing. It's quite a gift. It's a gift you give yourself in some ways, don't you think?
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank God for horses. All right, honey. Thank you, Elise.
Thanks, Val. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Yeah. Okay. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, it's Val. I hope you enjoyed that and are feeling inspired. There's two things I want you to do next. One is to share this with your horse-loving friends so they can enjoy it too. And the next thing, really important, get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Reasons Horses Act Out or Go Lame. It's at showhorseexpert.com. You're going to love it. You're going to learn all 7 of the most common problems horses have with humans. Knowing what I know as a horse whisperer will help you understand and bond with your horse at a much deeper level, and you can start solving problems together. Seriously, get your copy now. I've had people tell me that their relationship with their problem horse changed when they read the book, and that they noticed how much happier their horse was too. It's really good stuff. All right, go to showhorseexpert.com. I'll see you there.